Please make welcome Professor Sidney Dekker.
Thank you, Drew. And let's talk about me having me reduced to a QR code. This is apparently how it works nowadays. So, but then you need your phone if you want that to work. I mean, you can try with your eyeballs, but that's not going to yield a lot. Okay, it's gone. Here's some of the stuff I've been on the back end on as a human factors expert. I soloed on gliders when I was 14. This is possible in Europe, still is, and was back then. I grew up in Europe. Flown some other things, some bigger things since then, but there's been some glider accidents in between as well. No pictures of those because some of those hit quite close to home. Do you know what my response was to all these involvements? I created a lot of paperwork. Here's just some of the books I've written, which you haven't read, and which are not on the table at the back. But you're in good company because I haven't read them either. Okay? I mean, well, you have read 3 of them. That's more than I have. But I've read a few because they are audiobooks and I had to read them. But but there's one cool thing. Who has a waypoint named after them? I actually have a waypoint, literally, because of my involvement in an accident and helping the boys involved and the ATCOs. They decided to name a way, but it's 5 letters, so it's slightly phonetic. But there you go. So I think, it's all nice to have all kinds of scientific qualifications, but a professor with a waypoint named after? I thought that was very cool. All right, let's talk. Jeff, thank you. Yesterday, Jeff told us that every story of human error has a backstory, has an organizational backstory that we need to understand. A second story. The first story is, oh my God, how could these people be so stupid? And it's easy to then blame pilot error. But behind that first story sits a second story, a much deeper story. Just to illustrate how that works here, here's my Woomford. Thank you, Drew. I lived in Singapore for a little bit, in part to teach at NTU there, but also to help keep these boys out of jail. They'd crashed in Taiwan, which is not a good place to crash. They chained people up in jail. They were detained for 54 days. This happened on takeoff. And those of you who know the incident probably remember they were supposed to take off from 5 left at the top, took off from 5 right, which was going to be closed half an hour later forever because of this big building at the end for rubber dog shit out of Hong Kong or something, or computer chips for the rest of the world. So there was a bunch of construction equipment on 5 right, so the little runway that they took off from, that they slammed into about rotation speed. And if you do that with a 7.4, you're doing about 150 knots. And so the 7.4 brakes first. They're kind of flimsy compared to construction equipment. Now, of course, the question was, how can you be so stupid? I mean, it's just a little bit further taxi. So what we did, we went back to the lab, and I'm going to explain the whole incident to you, which is incredibly unfair. I didn't need the whole day to just go into the depths. But just to reaffirm the point that Jeff was making, which I am expecting you all to make after today, that every story of human error has that backstory. Without understanding the backstory, you might as well not bother talking about an incident because you're going to miss the real sources of improvement, right? If you just stick with, oh, they should watch out more carefully. Let's put up some posters, right? Try harder, care more, care more. We have great safety campaigns, right, with posters. Care more, which puts the impotence of safety people on full display for everyone to see. As in, Drew, shit, I don't know what to do anymore. Let's put up a poster so that everybody else can try a little harder and solve our problems, right? It's very cute. And those of you who work in the mining industry or something affiliated, you will have seen those posters. But all they do is tell you, unreliable lot, to try harder. Not in this case. So we went to the lab, and we were trying to figure out how is it possible for somebody, for a crew, 3, driving a 747, which is shit to taxi, right? The bigger the plane, the easier it is to fly. As some of you will have flown big things will know. But the crappier it is to taxi, right, Jeff? Right? It's like a ferry boat. You go, where do I begin and end? I don't know. So you sit quite high up. You don't make, on a 7.4, you make ground contact visually 30 meters ahead or something for the first time? Yeah, so it's quite far. So it's like almost supervisory control rather than direct control. So these boys show up. We were able to use lab work back in Sweden, where I was at the time, after this incident, to use the atmospheric modulation transfer function. This is a rate that actually explains, and you can mathematically model, how much of a light source is visible because of the energy that it retains on the back of the eyeball. These were pre-typhoon conditions, 200 meters visibility. When these boys showed up with the nose pointing that way, this is what they saw. Anybody driving a big jet only knows one thing in bad visibility. Follow the green. Because otherwise you're going to be in the mud. You're going to be in the mud with only one wheel out of the 16, 18 that you have on this thing, and you won't move. And you don't make friends doing that. So had Taiwan followed all the rules associated with closing a runway, this is how it would have looked. Now where do you go? And you're coming to me and saying, human error. You shall be criminally prosecuted for your human error. I think we have a deeper backstory, right, Jim? As always, as always. And so remember that. There's always the organizational backstory. By the way, why does Taiwan not have to follow any of the rules that we write internationally for aviation? They're not a member of the UN. There's only one more country that's, and thus not a member of ICAO. One more country that's not a member of the UN. Do you know which one? No, they're a member. That's why we can impose sanctions and expect results. He's been in the news lately. Exactly. The Vatican. They're not a member of the UN, but they have divine guidance systems. Just pray harder, you know, and it will reveal itself to you. I'm not Catholic. I'm the son of a preacher woman, but, you know, that would rule out that she would be Catholic to begin with. So, right. So what we then have done, and Jeff was toying with this yesterday, and I love that, right? A, B, C, D. Let's do more procedures on top of procedures on top of a checklist because you are unreliable. And just to dive it home, we'll put up a poster, right? Care more, do your A, B, C, D, right? So you go around in the real world, and then you see these things. These boys are putting up putting a sewer pipe inside an existing sewer pipe down at Logan. And we're watching the work, we're helping them with some things out of my lab here at Griffith. And the boss, the project director, by the name of Christian, is standing next to me, watching them as they do this work. So somebody in safety, and wow, I'm not a safety professional, and I'm not very popular with most safety professionals. When you write books like The Safety Anarchist and compare HR to human remains, you know, you don't make friends doing that. So some safety Nazi had come in and said, this is confined space, right? Because there's a manhole. Now the manhole is this deep, by the way, and it's quite narrow. If you want the guy to go in the manhole, you got to back the truck over him, right? Is he in yet? You know? And then you can retrieve it with your beautiful bloody tripod, which is out of the way, by the way, because if you put it over the hole, you can't get the pipe in. And this is what I was told when I was trained on the 7-3. Dekker, either you follow all the rules, or you fly the damn jet. Which is it going to be? Well, let's fly the jet. So the beautiful thing is that boys know that this actually creates extra risk, right? So we put these extra procedures in place, which creates more risk. The risk being the tripod falling on top of him. And by the way, if you're a physio or married to one, and they look at this, they'll shit bricks, right? I mean, it's not maybe you try to do that with Drew. You won't get him off the ground. I mean, he'll be stuck in that position forever, right? You know, lift him up. You know, okay, let's stretch it out. Yeah. So, never mind the shoulder, by the way. So the pipe gets heated up in the truck, so there's some time pressure, right? Boys, keep going, because you don't want the pipe to go hard. If the pipe goes hard, Logan City Council becomes deeply unhappy with you, right? So there's some time pressure. Tools are out of the way, because God forbid that the tools would fall in the hole. Then you have to stop work. But you stop work, the pipe goes hard, right? And by the way, if the tool goes in the hole, then obviously there's all kinds of requirements to don PPE because it is confined space and it smells like poo, right? And so, danger, danger. I don't think a safety Nazi would have ever seen this, but it's confined space. The most interesting thing is, and then the boss, Christian, walks to the next group of boys doing this, the other end of the street, and my student, David, stays. So Christian walks off, and David, my student, stays. And the boys go, all right, let's get some shit done. Do you know the pipe goes in the ground 2.5 times quicker this way? 2.5 times quicker. You got a productivity increase of 250% just by not being a safety Nazi. I showed this to a Polish colleague. Now, the Polish are crazy bastards, right? Because either the Germans will roll in or the Russians will roll in every few decades, right? And so they have very little of a future. So they live in this foreshortened universe. I smoke, I decide when I die. I am more Pavlova. Yes. And he sees this and he says, we have this too. We call safety theater. And I went, safety theater? Which is now the title of one of my books, by the way, but I thought it was so good. Safety theater. I said, tell me more about safety theater. He said, it's very obvious. Boss show up, you open curtain, you play safety theater. Boss piss off, you close curtain, you get shit done. Safety theater. We're really good at safety theater. And this is at the center, at the heart of the concern that we have. As long as we keep playing safety theater because we feel under pressure to show good results in safety, as long as we keep measuring safety, right, Drew, by the absence of negative events, there's one way in which you can increase your safety immediately. Just shut up. Just hide shit. Just don't talk to each other. The research actually backs this up, and it gets quite scary. This is what I found in the wheel well of an airplane. The fact that it was in the wheel well actually tells me something about the culture of the place, right? That apparently that these guys cannot talk to their boss about this, right? Let me do my job. I'm a pro. I know what I'm doing. No. There is really. Do you know that I honestly believe? I'm from Amsterdam, right? I was born where this is a heavily regulated profession, for good actually, as far as I understand. But as far as I know, fatal injury risk in this profession cannot be prevented by wearing high vis. Right? Fatal injuries, sexually transmitted disease, drugs, violence. Vest doesn't work. And besides the Johns who are there to check out the wares, which doesn't happen in Amsterdam because, but they're doing like 5Ks an hour, I think. So do you know that I honestly believe that you Aussies, you get so much inspiration from this, right? There's no safety problem in Australia that cannot be solved with more high vis. Right? We got a safety problem. Just more high vis, right? That's why I was wearing high vis glasses yesterday, right? Look at me go. But I thought, I'll be more professorial today. But so the UK actually showed this. Construction companies that have adopted a zero harm policy. And a zero harm basically says we outlaw injury and incidents. Zero is the only acceptable result because these idiotic boards think it makes them look good, right? The companies that had adopted a zero harm policy killed 4 people over the study period. The companies that had not adopted a zero harm policy killed 0 people. So how about that? As long as we keep measuring and incentivizing safety by the absence of negative events, we are digging a hole for ourselves. And this is where the patience of safety science has run out with this kind of logic. Yes, we need to understand our incidents, but much more goes well than goes wrong. Much more. And that's a bit of the theme that, themes, there's lots of themes. But so this is, you want to put up a poster, I think this one is useful, right? In all seriousness. 0 means you're learning 0, which is stupid. Right? Authenticity, openness, a willingness to contribute to the conversation. I think, and that was certainly part of the discussion yesterday, but we need to do everything we can to remove downward pressure on people's willingness to share, to contribute to that conversation. If we want safety to be that cultural property that Drew expressed as his aspiration yesterday, right? Again, the results from the research back this up, right? Healthcare, which is a very grateful field to study because they kill so many people. Statistically, we really don't do enough, right? Our stats are really just noise in the margin. In healthcare, they're not noise in the margin. And I'll show that in a second. But so you have culture of openness, you kill fewer patients. Very simple. Talk to each other, which for healthcare is very difficult for all kinds of reasons. But so this is the point that Drew was hammering on in terms of safety 1, safety 2. So a Gaussian, I thought we got a bunch of math nerds and probabilistic math they might not be so good at, by the way. It's all deterministic. But so a Gaussian, a normal curve. So suppose this is a normal curve of our flying or of any activity. When we use incidents to try to learn, it's actually quite silly because we're using a tiny portion of the experience base. We're just using a little tail end to go, oh, let's learn everything we can from this tail end. And then we look at Sully landing on the Hudson River, right, which is over there. And we go, oh, let's learn everything we can from Sully's heroic intervention. And I talked to Steve, his co-pilot, and Steve said to me, yeah, nah, there wasn't, well, he wouldn't say that because he's American, but that would be. This is about as articulate as an Australian male would get. Yeah, nah. Oh, you were also able to produce something like, oh, look. Yeah, nah, oh, look. You are more articulate than that, but you were trained well, I think. So are you Australian? Wow. You think so? Okay. So I spoke to Steve, his co-pilot, and Steve said, yeah, no, there wasn't much to learn. Let me tell you about our CRM moment. I said, yeah, Steve, tell me about your CRM moment. He says, yeah, well, so Sully's flaring above the Hudson. By the way, you know that Sully was reading one of my books on that trip, right, which got wet in the landing, obviously. And so he got presented with a replacement copy on CNN. I could feed my family for a year after that, man. Yeah, don't expect public university to do that. But anyway, so Steve says, let me tell you about this CRM. Oh, so we're flaring, right? And it's eerily silent. And man, I've been working like a banshee trying to get this French thing to restart the engines, right? But they've gobbled so much geese that it's not working. So our CRM moment was as follows. He says, Sully turns to me, says, Steve, any other ideas? Steve says, nope. Sully looks straight ahead and splash we go. So to hell with all that CRM training. But so trying to glean our serious learning from the tail ends of the distribution is limited, if anything, because there's a lot of stuff going well every day. Now, this is not just a safety story. This also goes for when we become all concerned about future viability of clubs. Yes, we can sit here in Sac-and-Ash and go, oh my God, we're only 2,500 people. Yes, but what is actually happening when they do decide to show up? What is it that motivates them? Have we really understood why people do show up rather than, oh, why don't they? Right? Why don't we look at the Gaussian, the middle, closer to the mean? Let me tell you how I got to that insight. In a hospital, not as a patient, although I've been in hospitals as a patient, but 1 in 13 goes wrong in this hospital. This is a Canadian hospital, but it's very similar to typical Australian public hospital. 1 in 13 goes wrong, which means that from 13 people walking in the doors, 1 will go out dead. Or 1 will go out, I was here to have my kneecap operated on, and my left testicle is missing. Right? And you call it, well, it looked like a kneecap or something, right? So 1 in 13. Very popular is that you're drugged in the wrong way, so you're poisoned basically. And I said to the patient safety officer, who was an emergency doc and one of my students, and I said, so you have some big data. If it's 1 in 13, when you got more than 13 people walking through the doors every day, oh yeah, thousands. So big data, which means that you will have some patterns about what happens when it goes wrong. He said, oh yeah, I have big data. I said, well, show me. He says, this is what happens. These bloody people, nurses particularly, they do workarounds, shortcuts. They violate the procedures. They don't follow the guidelines. Errors, miscalculations. With Gen Z coming in, they have no idea where the decimal point goes. Right? ChatGPT, where does the decimal point go in this way? Unfindable. I mean, I put my infusion pump here this morning. Where is it now? Right? Well, it has wheels, and clearly it moves. Right? Unreliable instruments. What else did they find? User-unfriendly technologies. Organizational frustrations. Right? You work for a fascist nurse matron. Nurses eat their own, by the way. Did you know that? They're like spiders. They're just arachnids. Dogs should just come to visit, right? They piss off as soon as they can, right, to stay out of the fray. But supervisory obstacles. I said, okay, Rob was his name, patient safety. What are you doing about it? And he knew me at that point, and he looked at me sheepishly, and he said, we put up some posters. Kill me now, right? We put up some posters. Oh, and the other thing we did, he said, we got some hallway monitors. Like in high school, a hallway monitor to surveil the compliance with hand-washing guidelines and protocols. Right? And then this internal medicine girl gets pulled up. Have you ever seen an internal medicine person at work? Right? They walk into this, there's this bed, right, with Steve in the bed, right? And they look at Steve's feet sticking up, but they stand here, go, 5 meters away. I didn't touch the guy. Why would I need to wash my hands every time I say? Anyway, so no context. But then I asked, so how is that working for you? Posters, hallway monitors, other interventions. He said, well, we're still stuck in 1 in 13. Okay. I wasn't really surprised. But then I said, well, but if the one goes wrong, 12 go well. What about the 12 that go well? When he looked at me literally as I was taking a pee in his face. What? No idea. I have no time to investigate what goes well. I have no time for that. I'm a little busy with everything that comes in, right? So look at my statistics. I have to deal with all these incidents. So I said, okay, we'll take a bunch of students. We'll look at what goes well. So we studied normal work in this hospital. Do you know what we found? So in the one that goes wrong, this is what happens. In the 12 that go well, A, B, C, D, or not, right? It doesn't matter. Then you start digging into some of these things, and it turns out that a typical ward nurse, even here in Queensland, needs to follow about 600 policies every day. 600 for a ward nurse. And then you start interrogating. Do you know how many they know? 6. That's very generous. Between 2 and 3. Don't block a fire exit and clean the microwave after you use it or something. I mean, that's what they might remember. So at some point, right, it has to create existential concerns for those who write these policies. I am so important. I contribute to patient safety in this hospital. No, you don't. You're just wasting paper, right? 597 of your policies are unknown. Stop writing them. You can always write more. And we can do that too. We can always write more. That's easy. Writing crap is easy, right? I mean, look at me. I write crap all the time, right? I mean, I get incentivized for it at the uni, but but then at some point, the risk manager, of course, got in on this, and she was a bit perturbed, shall we say. Because if there's no difference between what goes wrong and what goes well, then what are my levers? What the hell am I supposed to do? What can I change? So we went deeper into the data, and what we started finding out was that there is a difference. In the 12 that go well, this is what you see. You actually see more dissent and diversity of opinion. If people all agree, let's go bomb Iran, then that leads to, unless you think that's a good idea, but then that leads to trouble. Keep a discussion about risk alive, even when everything looks safe. Are you sure that this hunk of meat needed a testicle removed, or are we working on the kneecap, right? Keep that discussion alive. Don't say that, hey, I'm not making this up. One of the surgeons had done 16 bypasses on a day. 16. Right? I mean, yeah, they come in prepped and ready to go for him to do his magic. But 16 bypasses? I mean, at some point you become locked up in this frame of mind where I'll just keep doing what I did in the last one because apparently it works. Let me do more of the same. Past success is not a guarantee of safety in a world that is as dynamic and complex as the one in which we live, right? It doesn't work. You cannot use past results as a strong predictor. There's some, but not all. Ability to say stop. Now, and I think, Drew, we've got this ultimately wrong in aviation, that whenever CRM started in the 80s, We're always looking at the junior and telling the junior to speak up. Be more heroic, right? Yes, violate your own career and screw up your future, but thou shalt speak up, otherwise you die, right? And fair, that's true, because death doesn't discriminate when you're riding up front the damn thing, right? The only thing that it'll do is you both arrive at the scene of the accident as the first people, right? You're there first. I was here first. But always focused on the junior and making the junior understand that they need to speak up in order to invest in safety. What we're finding, of course, and it's fairly intuitive, is that shutting up always has stronger incentives than speaking up. Just stay silent. Let's see how it works out. All right, let's see how this works out. And this is actually a little seed I'm planting in relation to our own aging and whether and how to intervene in that, because these are tricky intervention decisions that, of course, every instructor faces every instructional flight. Shall I intervene, or will we leave this student to plod on a little bit and see how they go? Right? The problem with that is obviously that the longer you wait, the tinier the window for intervention and meaningful intervention becomes. But if you intervene really early, you make the evidence of the necessity of your intervention go away. Why did you take over? Well, you were going to get in trouble. Well, I wasn't, was I? Right? I mean, if you have somebody who speaks like that, kick him out of the club. But you understand the dilemma, right? So there is no such thing as a perfect intervention decision. It's always a trade-off space that you're somehow suspended in. You do a little bit of this, but that means you're sacrificing that. You do a little bit more of that, but then you're sacrificing this. So it's a trade-off space, not a decision point, right? There's an optimal intervention point. No, there isn't. Not even with an aging population like ours. I'll get back to that. Some other things that we found: spare resources to act, right? Take some extra water, take some extra fuel if you fly something with an engine. Have some extra beds hidden for the Saturday night shift. Nurses are really good at hiding beds, right? Either administratively or actually physically, because they know there's going to be a surge, right? When the pubs close. Don't wait for inspections, audits to improve things. And I think that is one of the strong suits of the club culture, Drew, already, right? That we don't have to wait for level 3s to come in and do their clipboard warrior nonsense, right? Sorry, I've done it too, but the clipboard warrior contribution to safety culture. You actually can improve things all the time, right? But it doesn't mean adding more rules on top of rules, right? Which a certain organization is really good at, right? They're not currently flying. It's something to do with submarines, I think. But you don't think this is funny at all? Okay. So the other one that we found was pride of workmanship. If you actually have people who are proud of what they do, they step back from the bed, right? And all we see is this hunk of bloody meat. But they go, really good job, right? And they elevate their juniors in it. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for flagging this. This was really a good intervention. Beautiful. That sort of pride of workmanship has correlations with good outcomes. You see that less in the one that goes wrong, more in the 12 that go well. So think about housekeeping, how things look, the club, in your fleet, and you will have seen big differentials there, right? But pride of workmanship somehow correlates with safety. I don't know which comes first, cause effect. And at some point we stop worrying. You know, it's a worthwhile investment. I was then working at the Darling Downs, far out west, the coal seam gas. They're building a gas compressor because apparently Australia decided that we don't need it, so let's sell it to the Japanese. I think they're ruining that decision now. But so Nick is working there because no Australian in the right mind would actually. I mean, the only reason why you would be on the Darling Downs is to go fly gliders, right? To work there is a miserable place. I mean, even the birds have relocated to Brazil, right? And so there's no wedgies, nothing. Yet he's wearing a hard hat, and nothing can fall on his head. Right? I've often wondered whether you Aussies secretly believe in this old Norse myth that the sky will one day fall. At least if I wear a hard hat, I'm prepared. You know. Then he's got stickers on his hard hat. And the true safety Nazi, of course, comes back to me and says, no, but that's wrong. You cannot put stickers on a hard hat. That voids the warranty. Do you know that the breakage pattern can actually change in very subtle ways when you put stickers on the hard hat? Do you know what my response was to that safety Nazi? I said, do you know that you only have 4,000 weeks? That's it? Then you're dead. 4,000 weeks. That's all we have. And this is what you do. They weren't impressed. They weren't impressed. They may not have slept well that night, you know. Shit, how far into... And Drew doesn't have 4,000 weeks anymore, right? So he's got these stickers, but there's one sticker at the back which caught my eye. It's a little anthropological outcropping when you go look at this work. It says GSD. And I went, Nick, he's actually from the Midlands because he's not Aussie. What does that mean? Is he in the ground services division? And the guy next to me, who actually wasn't Aussie, but he was visiting with me, so not working there, he does the typical male Aussie thing. Yeah, oh, look. And I go, I am looking. That's why I am asking, you bastard. GSD. He says, nah, mate, that means get shit done. Have you got people like that in your club? Right? The get shit done people? Yeah. Do they do every A, B, C, D? No, they're there to get shit done, right? Nick is still alive. If you want to know how to get shit done, and done safely, then interesting to actually follow Nick. And this is where we begin to truly see this challenge that Steve threw before us yesterday. As in, safety is free from harm and danger, but also freedom from risk. Again, that defines safety in those very traditionalist terms that say safety is the absence of something, which I think is BS, and it doesn't help us get any further. Safety is the presence of things, something that Drew has been alluding to, right? Safety is the presence of things. But okay, let's look at that then. So I'm teaching Evie to ride a bike. This is a while ago. She now is almost finished as a vet. She's still alive, so must have done something good, or she must have been very great perspicuity in traffic. So she's learning to ride the bike. Yes, there are certain investments in safety, right? The helmet, right? No stickers on it, by the way. Take note. The bell is working. I've lubricated the chain, checked the brakes. Now my girl can go ride. But does that mean that she will survive the ride? No, because she enters into a dynamic world that is very difficult to predict, right? You cannot run the full tree analysis, the FMEA, for the world. You can try, but for a fairly limited system you can't, right? So your little piece of the 787, absolutely, right? The 7810. But once you start throwing a bike rider into the real world, you have buses, dogs, all of a sudden, all kinds of challenges and threats, harmful influences that she needs to learn to anticipate and work with. What the research is telling us is that the more we invest in safety and nanny people with multiple procedures and layers of high vis and padding, the less contact with the real world we allow them to make. We shrink the space for adaptive capacity because we don't expose them to risk. What the research is telling us is that that is actually stupid. There's a lot of piece of French research on North Sea fishing. What they're finding is the same thing. Yes, you can invest in safety, right? And there's all kinds of vessel requirements that these things need to adhere to. But the fishermen that come back, that don't die on the way, actually do the things on the right. Information hungry, right? So they're always looking at different sources. They define situations in terms of their ability to deal with them. Not as in, the wind is 26 knots, right? And the swell is like this. No, they define the situation in terms of their ability to deal with it. And when you sit there doing your silent patter in your own glider, this is what we do. We define situations not in their clean sort of environmental terms, but in terms of our ability to overcome whatever the problem is, or to exploit whatever opportunity exists. That's resilient behavior, not safe behavior. But it is exactly that what René beautifully calls these French, it's native résilience, résilience native. Native resilience, which is a beautiful term, right? Native resilience. When I look at our gliding community, I see a lot of that native resilience that is built up over years of experience, years of stories. Here, let me show you how it's done. Oh no, with this particular thing with the floppy wings, don't do that, do it like this. You wouldn't be able to find that in the pilot handbook, but this is what you get taught. Native resilience, craft style knowledge. This is the kinds of things that they discover. Resilience does not equal safety. So almost you can make the argument that safety reduces risk exposure and shrinks adaptive capacity. Exposing people to these things, yeah, in a careful, managed way. And this is why we have coaches, for example, as opposed to instructors, which is an interesting investment in this sort of idea, right? We increase risk exposure. You get closer to an outlanding. You enhance adaptive capacity. You unleash that native resilience. This is where the research is going. Maybe too sexy for the moment, but it's an interesting perspective, right? That safety ultimately may be the sum of these two. And so thinking about safety as the presence of capacities that make things go well. Just like the capacities that we found in the hospital. The capacity to say stop, to speak up, right? Those capacities, to show some pride of workmanship. What if it goes wrong after all? And I'm almost done. What if it goes wrong after all? I've been at the back end of so much bad stuff. I'm one of those guys who runs to that sort of suffering and trouble. Became a crisis chaplain to even be better equipped to deal with it. And we could talk about that for a long time, right? Trauma assumption, all those things. But when I see clubs respond, this is really what I want to put in your hearts. All right? Do 3 things for me. Because your response to an incident, to an outlanding with damage, is really a stress test for you. For you as a community, for you as a club, for you as a fellow human being, it is a stress test. And it's a stress test in 3 ways. The first part of the stress test is this question. Can you answer the question, could this have got worse? Could the outcome have been worse? And almost always, in some cases that I've and Drew have been standing at a grave site, then the outcome could not have been worse. Correct. But in many cases, most cases, the outcome could be worse. The question you need to ask then is, why didn't it? Why did it not get worse? It could have got worse, but it didn't. Why not? What were the capacities that this pilot or that situation or crew members or whatever threw into the mix to stop the progression from getting even worse? Because at that point, you as a club, as a community, as colleagues, can celebrate the capacities. And I'm sure you intuitively understand, and you might test this, but that's a much better conversation to have rather than, how could you be so stupid? That's not a useful conversation starter, right? The idea that it could have got worse but didn't allows you to talk about the positive capacities that we as a community possess in our training, in our own resilience, in our native resilience, in the way that we look after each other, in the equipment that we have. Why did it not get worse? Ask that question. And then you can actually have a conversation about the whole thing in a way that is much more positive. The second part of the stress test is this. Can you avoid what Jeff already warned us against yesterday morning right off the bat? Don't get stuck in that first story of human error. There is always the backstory, the second story. So don't go, oh, let's just blame the guy or the woman, right? And we're done. No, there's a backstory. Human error is, and the research is crystal clear on this since 1943, human error is a consequence of trouble, not a cause of trouble. Human error comes from somewhere, all right? It's a consequence, not a cause. Find the backstory, or the backstories, because that's where you can intervene, right? Not by telling everybody else to try a little harder. Finally, can you respond humanely to those involved? Because they're just like you. They didn't show up that morning to screw things up, to bend fiberglass. They showed up to have a good day, which is why we do what we do and what we love doing. We show up to have a good day together, in fellowship with fellow-minded people. People don't show up to the club to have an incident. So why did it make sense for them to do what they did? And how humanely can we relate to that and say, yeah, that could have been me. That could have been me. Eerily closely to the kind of nonsense I have done. If that is true, then what you're doing is you're choosing a more forward-looking model of accountability. I'm not against accountability. I've written lots of books on this too, which you haven't read. But the idea of asking, so what rule did they break? And how bad was that breach? Oh, they've done it 3 times last week already. What should the consequences be, right? That is all backward-looking or retributive accountability. It doesn't contribute to learning. In fact, the research shows, and I think intuition dictates, that this will drive honesty underground, right? If this is how you treat people, they'll shut up. They'll do it out of you next time, right? Forward-looking accountability asks 3 very different questions. Who's impacted by this? Well, we all are. That person is. Their spouse is, whatever. Lots of people impacted. If people are impacted, we owe them something. Now we need to do something. Who's going to do that? Whose obligation is it to meet the needs that result from these impacts? Very different conversation. How can we then set each other up for success better in the future, going forward? And who needs to do that? Hold each other accountable going forward. Hey, you promised that 2 weeks from now that was going to be fixed. It isn't. Hey, but you did this thing, right? Forward-looking accountability, not backward-looking accountability. Much more productive, constructive, and humane way of approaching these things, right? This is super summarized, but now, gang, all of us will one day have to touch down. The question is, can we do it with communal grace rather than with acrimony, silent hope, and a prayer every now and again? As in, oh my God, here's doddering 83-year-old, hope everything goes well, let's shoot a little prayer. All of us will one day have to touch down. Mortality rate for humanity is still 100%, right? Can we do it with communal grace? Here's what I want to give you as a bit of a mnemonic. Think ABCD. No, sorry. Only ABC. If you want to do this with grace, right, the aging pilot problem is, oh my God, how are we going to tell this pilot that they really shouldn't be flying alone anymore if they themselves refuse to come to that insight, or their spouse forces them to, which often happens, right? You can either be right or stay married, right? And so I've been married for a while, so I'm wrong a whole lot. And anyway, so have alternatives, discuss alternatives. What are you going to do if you're not flying? What is it going to be? Because if there's no alternative paradigm to replace the one that you live in at that moment, it's very difficult to say goodbye to it. So develop stringent alternatives. This, by the way, goes for any case in which you have this deepening escalation of commitment, is what the sociological literature calls it. The finance people call it sunk cost, right? So, no, I've sunk 40 years of gliding into this and I'm not giving up. Escalation of commitment. I am still good. I know what I'm doing. Escalation of commitment gets broken by having solid alternatives, having a discussion about balancing, yes, okay, we can still do this, but let's go together, or something like that. And the third one is really the most important one. Invest as a club, not in a support network, but in a challenge network. A challenge network. People who are able to say legitimately and kindly and compassionately, enough. It's enough. Stop almost killing yourself, right, and making all of us look bad, or whatever the languages you will use. That's the kind of stuff that would help in a cockpit as well. I flew with lots of female captains when I was based in Copenhagen, right? And she'd walk around in very gender-neutral sort of countries, and lots of female captains, she'd sit down. Males never did this. Testosterone gets in the way somehow. She'd sit down and say to me, Sid, we're going to fly this thing down to Malaga or some other banana field and back up. If there's anything about my flying you don't like, you speak up, and I will do the same with you. Making it a reciprocal accountability, right? And a reciprocal challenge network. You can challenge each other, right? Let's go to Mariella, because I think everything that we talked about applies to, so there you go, our sustainability as a sport as well. Rather than sitting here and talking about why it's not working, why we're all aging out of this and nobody else is there to replace us, with 2,500 people left here and between 80 and 120,000 worldwide. What is it that is going well? And when you look at what goes well, even in the strange, twisted, smartphone screwed minds of Generation Z, right? These doom scroll adult bloody, anyway. I teach you. But you're too old. You're not Zed. Yeah, nah. Aiden goes, oh, look, let me take you out the back. Yeah. I love you too, brother. He can explain more about this later, but why he's Gen Z. But we got three things going for us, and maybe we can pick up on that as we dive into the next topic, right? We're ecological. What an amazing thing, particularly if we go winch electrically, right? Fancy that. But also, and this is actually not joking, but the thirst for authenticity, the thirst for real experience, for hearing and being in the sky, that thirst cannot be quenched with better VR, better AI. That can only be quenched by taking them out in the world. We have that to offer. And thirdly, when you look at how people get intrinsically motivated, what the research tells us on intrinsic motivation, I really want to do this. That intrinsic motivation comes from 3 attractions. One is, give them a sense of autonomy, as in, it's your plane, your PIC. That's it. When I was 14 and soloing, oh my God. I mean, that was huge. On the K8, right? Straight out of the 21, boom, on the K8, go fly on the winch. As a 14-year-old, can't even drive a moped, right? But flying an airplane. I mean, that sort of autonomy and responsibility is incredibly motivating. Mastery is the second one. Give us a chance to become better at something and notice the results. We do this in so many ways as a community, right? We invest in possibilities for mastery left, right, and center. Exploit that. And thirdly, what gives people intrinsic motivation is a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging to something bigger than yourself. When you fly something with an engine on the front, you don't need to. You start the damn thing, you go. Gliding is communal. And so you are automatically part of something bigger. Generation Z is deeply thirsting after that sort of meaning making. We have so much going for us, colleagues. Let's look at that as we go into the next topic. I love you. I could talk all day, but I should stop. Thank you so much. Thank you.